Awesome, and we are live. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kimberly Meck, and I am the Executive Director of Disability Empowerment Center. Welcome to our Understanding Ableism webinar for July 2025. It's if the disability community ran the schools. Visual description. I am a white female with a blue or a orange tie-dyed shirt on. I have my hair pulled back and I have sunglasses on top of my head. I won't tell you how old I am. So I'm going to read some accessibility information and then we will go ahead and get started. So captions are available in Zoom. Click Show Subtitle in your Zoom menu toolbar to turn them on. Captions are also running at captionviewer.net. That URL is too long to read, but we will paste it into the chat. Caption Viewer allows you to enlarge the font and change the color and contrast of the captioning. ASL interpreters are available today. We are presenting in gallery view, so the interpreters should always be visible. You do not need to pin them. Please know that we have 2 interpreters, so if you pin the current interpreter, it could prevent you from seeing the active interpreter after an interpreter change. You do not need to be on Zoom to access this event. We will read all questions out loud and voice any images on the screen so that content will be available to individuals calling in on the phone or who cannot see visual content. This information is being recorded. Sorry, lost my spot. We will answer questions periodically throughout the discussion. Please use the Q&A tab for any questions you have for the panelists, and please use the chat tab for general conversations and comments. And also please be aware that we will use both person with a disability and disabled person interchangeably, recognizing different people's preferences for person first or identity first language. And now I will turn it over to Colin, our intrepid AmeriCorps member. I just have to thank Colin and welcome him back after the brief hiatus that the federal government decided he needed. And so welcome back, Colin. Please go ahead and take it away.
All right, it's good to be back. So, hello everyone. My name is Colin Wilfred. My pronouns are he, they. I am an AmeriCorps member serving at the Disability Empowerment Center as the AmeriCorps King County Disability Consortium coordinator. And I am a white dude with dark brown hair with a dark blue striped polo with the Seattle Mariners logo on it. And I got some Asian style blinds behind me on the center and right, and a TV to my left. Let me orient everyone to this event. This is the 6th session of the 2025 season for our Understanding Ableism monthly series. These events are hosted by the King County Disability Consortium, which is composed of over 40 disability-serving organizations and individual disability advocates and activists. These Understanding Ableism events are led by the disability community promoting disability justice within the King County enterprise. In this 6th episode of the Understanding Ableism Series 2025 season, we will be looking at the experiences of people with disabilities in both K through 12 as well as higher education. From preschool to university, schools across the country do not operate with the disability community in mind, both in terms of accessibility and in the attitudes of students and teachers or professors alike. Thanks to Section 504 and Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, ableism is supposed to be illegal at schools. While Section 504 and IDEA gave schools a set of guidelines to follow in making sure students with disabilities are not left behind in the curriculum, they did little to change the attitudes of people without disabilities from negative to positive. As a result, students with disabilities are still bullied by their non-disabled peers, and there is a lack of awareness as to what IEPs and 504 plans are and how they help students with disabilities succeed. They may not even know that Section 504 is currently in danger of getting overturned. As hopeless of a future that students with disabilities seem to have, perhaps all of us, whether we are part of the disability community or not, and whether we are in school or not, can help by taking action to carry what we learn in this webinar to help people with disabilities. Sorry, I lost my spot. To help people with disabilities have the best possible educational outcomes. Students with disabilities are depending on their non-disabled peers and teachers to understand how different their lives are from what is normatively expected. All of our panelists today know what it is like for their peers or teachers to openly doubt them, yet they have feedback based on what they experienced as students that can possibly help make schools more welcoming to the disability community. The Kimberly, should I post the link to the chat, or will you do it?
I'll take care of it for you, Colin.
Anyway, Kimberly's going to post the document that contains all the questions. Oh, it's actually in the chat. Oh, actually, never mind. The document that contains all the questions that will be asked on today's panel will be posted by Kimberly in the chat. Now, I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves with their names, pronouns, a visual description, where they live, and what their connection is to this topic. We're going to start off with Emily.
Hello, I am Emily. I use she, they, or any pronoun. Description, I am an Asian femme-looking person. I am wearing a muted blue and green t-shirt, and I am sitting in a classic therapist's office. And I am from Seattle.
Next up is Cora.
Hi, I am Core or Cora. Either name is fine. I use they, them pronouns. And for a visual description, for visual description, I am wearing a blue, green, and purple tie-dyed shirt. I am white, mask presenting, but in the background, I have a speaker and a window, just generic stuff. And I am calling in from Bellingham, Washington. My connection with the topic is that I have grown up autistic, so of course I've constantly struggled with the academic and social environment.
All right, and last but not least, we have Ben Moore.
Hey everybody, my name's Ben Moore. They, he pronouns, but really, other one is fine, don't really care. Where I'm based out of is Seattle for University of Washington land, as well as the Alyssa Burnett Center, both of which Colin know very, very well. Let's see, physically, this is gonna be hard because I'm blind. Got brownish hair. There might still be some blonde in it, if there's still some dye in it. Got some glasses on, have some headphones on that are bluish, dark blue, and white looking, but also Native American looking a bit. My connection to the disability community is because I'm disabled and I live it every day. I'm almost fully blind, totally autistic, and I also ADHD, some learning disabilities, some other autoimmune diseases that really suck. But yeah, happy to be here.
All right. So Emily has a commitment at 11 o'clock. So what I plan to do is just ask Emily the 4 questions that I have for this webinar first. Then I will ask the questions again so Cora and Ben can take turns answering them. Afterwards, I think Cora and Ben will still be available to answer any audience questions if you have them.
Well, I gotta go at 11:30, but yeah, until
That's right. All right. All right.
I
Next
will
slide, please.
definitely be able to answer questions at the end.
Okay. Next slide. No, actually, question number 1. When finding groups to socialize with, what worked for you or the people with disabilities you worked with? Remember, this is just Emily.
Hello, it is I again. Thank you for having me on this panel. I forgot, specifically an AFAB individual with autism who actually got an adult diagnosis. To answer the first question, groups socialize. Honestly, maybe this was something people experience, but I was very hyper independent because I unfortunately learned at a very young age if you were AFAB and weird, you had to be by yourself. And a lot of my adult experience has been trying to reach out to the disabled community and connect with people who understand my lived experience.
All right, next slide, please. Question number 2. Can you recall a teacher or professor refusing to adhere to an IEP, a 504 plan, or accommodation requests?
So this is an interesting one to answer. Because I had an adult diagnosis, I was never registered or I feel label is the wrong word, but I was never registered as a student with disabilities, K through 12. So everyone just kind of thought I was a bad student. I know that sounds like very like an intense thing, but a lot of my teachers were very hands off with me. So unfortunately, I can't really speak to this question just because of not knowing my diagnosis at this age. A lot of teachers just let me exist in class and just assumed I was ugh.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Question number 3. How have the schools you attended or worked with lack accessibility, sensory friendliness, or inclusivity?
Why are the schools so obsessed with fluorescent lights? Somebody please answer that. I don't understand why they're like, yes, bright white flashing lights. Okay, hopefully not flashing, but those, I think y'all's know what I'm talking about. The very intense white lighting, and it's like, oh, this is professional lighting. It's like, this is ouch lighting. Sorry, that was the first thing that I thought of. Inclusivity, honestly, my lived experience with that has mostly been on the social realm, where I feel like people can pick up really quickly that I'm not like the other quotes, and they kind of avoid me. So,
All right, next slide, please. And finally, question number 4. If you had any advice for school staff regarding how to be more inclusive towards students with disabilities, what would it be?
honestly, I just think in general, people just need to have a little bit more understanding and patience, and understanding that not everybody fits the cookie cutter mold that people want us to be, and that every human is a unique experience, and just, dare to learn, talk to your students, ask, learn, do research. Like, I personally don't think it needs to be super hard. It's not like you have to major in psychology like I do to learn about this. I think it just literally comes down to be curious and compassionate towards your fellow human being.
All right. So we've got Emily for like 15 more minutes. So if any of you have any audience questions for Emily, please ask them now.
I can let you know if I see any, Colin.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll wait till like 10:48, and then if there's no questions by 10:48, I'll have Emily state her closing thoughts. All right. Carrie Wong says, thank you for organizing this talk. Anyway, it doesn't look like there's any questions, so I'm just going to let Emily state her closing thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me speak on this. I swear this is relevant, but I was really happy to be able to join this. I wish I could stay for the full thing, but I am actually a training to be a therapist, so I will be an autistic therapist in the future. And I really, really find this information valuable because these are exactly the kinds of things I'm probably going to be talking about in session. And who knows, maybe I'll start a talk of my own about how to be, disability advocates in therapy. Anyway, thanks for having me on. And thank you, Colin, for inviting me. And nice to meet you all.
No problem. Bye.
Until we meet again.
Thanks for joining us, Emily.
Thanks.
Okay. Now Cora and Ben are going to take turns answering the same questions I just asked Emily. So, question number one. We'll have Ben go first since he has a commitment at 11. So, all right. Question number one. When finding groups to socialize with, what worked for you or the people with disabilities that you worked with?
The first thing I would say, if you're looking for somebody to be a friend with, and this just goes for anything. First, find what you like, find what you like to do, find what you're good at, and find a friend or several friends along those lines. For me, it was, going out in recess, finding classmates who, because here's an example, because I liked video games, then I would go out and find, other kids who liked video games. And so I formed a bond around that. Later in high school, it was psychology. And now I work with people who enjoy the same thing I do. Well, I assume they do because they work with people with disabilities. Like I say, also in your work, find something that you love and do it as a career, like I do. Even though I am going into my final year of college to become a certified registered medical assistant. So, yeah, gonna be, well, I think one of the first blind people who's gonna be helping nurse people, blind person here, drawing blood, good stuff. As well as autistic, and it is hard because like I'm not very good with people, being autistic and all and ADHD, but I really love working with them, and it just kids especially, and it fills my heart with joy, and right now I work across the lifespan, so I work at Illustranet, which well, Colin. I work with adults 18 and older, and then the clinical training unit at University of Washington, I work with children, so and teenagers, so I'm pretty well versed across the lifespan, which I think is a good foundation for. So just basically to conclude, too long, didn't read. Find what you like, and find hobbies that you like, and go to a meetup, go to somewhere where other people like what you like, and you'll have a better chance of making friends, no matter if you're weird or not. You can go to the next question, or you can answer, or it doesn't matter.
My plan is after you finish your answer,
Okay.
Cora answers.
Okay, go ahead.
For me, as far as who I didn't get along with, that is hard to pinpoint because I think most people I ran into focused a lot on things that didn't matter, or I tended to brush off as superficial. And I basically looked for people who were actually interested in stuff that, in my mind, mattered and wanted to talk about those things. There's also like subtle characteristics that I don't even know how to describe. And it's obviously going to be different for each person too. But I sort of developed a sense over time of who I didn't vibe with. And figuring this out took me a long time, and I went around in circles, getting nowhere a lot. But eventually, I learned that once I start talking to someone, I can get a sense if we're like compatible. I guess the other thing is I do not like hanging out in groups. I hang out with people in one-on-one settings pretty much always. If it's in a group setting, I'm not going to consider it important. And if someone leads me into a group setting when I wasn't expecting that, I don't consider us compatible usually.
Okay, next slide, please. Question number 2. Can you recall a teacher or professor refusing to adhere to an IEP, a 504 plan, or accommodation requests?
Yeah. A buttload of times, I'll say. I guess especially in high school, I was at an IEP meeting, and my social studies teacher, I had the same social studies teacher throughout 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. She never did get my disability. She's like, I don't know how to accommodate. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, really? Like, I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. I'm like, you don't know how to accommodate. Like, oh my God. Yeah, high school, college. I had a math teacher who explicitly said if you use the disability accommodations office, please remove yourself from this class. I'm not shitting you. He actually said that. I'm like, okay, I'll just switch teachers. But you know what? Yeah, I like teachers who are like, hey, I want to teach those students. Hey, at least you actually admit you're an ableist. So yeah, I'm gonna leave your class. Sorry. Other times, at in this is funny when I actually, one of my accommodations was like he doesn't have to take gym. They don't have to take gym, and it's just like I use that. They're like, no, you have to take a gym, and I'm like, no, it says no in my IEP, and then I still had to take gym anyway. But that's one time. I did get hit in the head when they said that I shouldn't be playing volleyball. That's another time. Um, you know, and then there was one time in this was back, so I grew up in the 90s, so anybody here, if they remember the WASL, um, which stands for the Washington Assessment of Student Learning. Wow, I still remember that acronym. That's amazing. I was supposed to get a double time as well as a room to myself, and I never got those accommodations. Back in the 90s, right after the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, had been passed. It was kind of when I was in elementary school, and they were still rolling out the implementations. There was a school, I went to the Edmond School District. There is a school, Hazelwood, and it was basically, there was this room called the BI room, the visually impaired room, if you will. All of these students, regardless of whether you had a visual disability, a cognitive disability, some kind of other physical disability, motor, it didn't matter. You're put in that classroom, At that time, I'd lived in Linwood, and the special bus, the short buses went down all the way as far as Seattle. I would have to be up at 5:30 to make it to school at 9:45. But yeah, that was my experience. Thank you.
Or you're next.
So I personally didn't have a lot of experience with accommodation refusals. I have definitely known people who did have their accommodations refused, but I, of course, can't speak for them. Instead, what I'll talk about is more subtle ways that my school experience was not accessible. So for me personally, I have always done well in math and science, but I've really struggled in English and history. So there's some issues with that. With history in particular, the teachers would often expect me to learn certain facts, but I was never sure which facts they cared about. And so when the test comes, there would be a lot of questions that I just don't know the answer to. And I don't think any amount of accommodations can fix that. With my English classes, sometimes they had tests and quizzes where I had the same problem, but even essays, it would depend on, is the prompt something I can answer? One thing I definitely did not like was in class essays where I don't even see the prompt until I'm about to write the essay and I have a set amount of time to do it. I need much more time to like know what to do. And what these have in common is they test your knowledge of certain things without you knowing in advance what it is, which they're going to pick because they want you to learn, quote unquote, all of it, which simply is not possible. And what each student thinks of as all is going to be different for each person. I want to say, especially for autistic people and other disabilities, but even aside from that, everyone is going to have different ideas of what matters, what they want to learn. And the school format also, in my opinion, tends to teach people that learning is unpleasant. And so people aren't going to want to learn, then they'll just cram for the test and forget it afterwards, and in the long run not learn much at all.
Okay, next slide, please. Question number 3. How have the schools you attended or worked with lacked accessibility, sensory friendliness, or inclusivity? Beginning with Ben.
Oh, anytime, and I know this one is, you cannot avoid this one because of state and federal law, but anytime ever that there was a fire drill. Yeah, especially back then, because I didn't know how to cope, because I didn't know how to say, hey, I'm autistic, I don't like fire drills. Can I be warned ahead of time? I wasn't warned ahead of time until starting maybe in 4th grade, when it became apparent that fire alarms gave me panic so much that I vomited. Let's see. Especially how we have switched to work with lack of accessibility. Okay, so since we're finding this, yes. As Emily said earlier, those fluorescent lights, those hurt the eyes so much. Back when I was going to school, computers were just starting to have like good internet. So like there was like Windows 95 and stuff, but we didn't have, there was no, JAWS was not a thing. So I don't know what JAWS stands for. But it's the software for the blind, which magnifies the text for you and speaks it out to you. There was not any of that. So I had to start learning computer stuff with just the straight text. So I would put my face right up to the screen. And then it still wasn't very good. There was very little Braille. Everything was taught lecture style, basically, and the only other kind of style that was a hands-on were those, those math cube things that you can manipulate, not Rubik's cubes. I forgot what they're called, but there was like no other learning style, and it was really hard for me to sit still and not want to run around. I was so hyper back then, and all they're like is, well, put this kid on Ritalin. Well, I mean, come on. Like, there was no, all I would have needed to do was just run out my energy. And, thankfully, by fifth grade, like, teachers would start to understand. I would bump into things. There was no wheelchair access anywhere at my school until about maybe fourth grade. Right before I left it, they were building the wheelchair access ramps. I wasn't allowed to have more time. I was the last person to complete my multiplication table. And I was the only student in my class who missed out on a third of field day almost because they were the last to know their multiplication tables. No help with that. No accommodations. There's a lot more in high school, but I want to make sure we have enough time for the other things. So, yeah.
For me, I've talked about this to some extent in the last question. I've talked about this in the last question with exam formats not working for me. Another issue was, so people around me knew that I was good at math and science, to the point that when I did make a mistake, they would often laugh at me, which was very annoying. Almost no one really, almost no one really took my strengths as something to value. They either didn't care about it either way, or they took it as something they could make fun of whenever they had a chance. So that was problematic throughout. I've talked about individual versus group settings as well. A related issue is people would form groups that were strictly bound to each other without really leaving room for outsiders. And I wasn't conscious of that being the problem until pretty recently, but I think it might have influenced my experience with groups in general, because when I'm in a group setting, I automatically associate it with groups that don't want me in.
Next slide, please. And finally, question number 4. If you had any advice for school staff regarding how to be more inclusive towards students with disabilities, what would it be?
My advice would be don't question that they say they have a and like accommodations. Okay, I'm gonna try not to speak so fast because this one can get me a little heated. I have a lot of advice. I guess I'll just share a few of my tips here. The first would be presume competence. Like it, a student knows what they need for accommodations. Don't question them. Don't be like, do you really need this? If it's within your means and you can provide it, just provide it. Another one that I would say how to be more inclusive is like include them in the discussion. Like see them as the person that they are, right? If they've got a disability, but yeah, see them as the person that they are. Remember that they're in your class. Call on them just as much as you would call, if I don't want to say like prioritize, but just like make an effort to include in all activities, whether that's PE or music or just in your teaching styles. Another way to be inclusive is to have a bunch of different teaching styles. When I teach Lend and I teach my disability advocacy classes, I incorporate lots of different learning styles, group work, videos, lecture, and so it's not just one thing because not everybody learns a certain way. We all have different learning styles. And I guess my final piece of advice is we don't have all day, although I could talk about this all day, would be, treat us as you treat anybody else. Yeah, we have disabilities, but we're no different. I mean, it accommodate us, yes, but also like don't make it look so obvious. Like don't point out that we've got disabilities. Like everybody can see that. Like don't make it a humiliation tactic. Basically, I kind of, yeah. So yeah, that's my advice. Thank you.
I think what I would say is that grades as a way of assessing student performance fundamentally doesn't work because you can't quantify how well a student understood content. And even if you could, just because someone is weaker in some areas isn't necessarily a bad thing. The high school curriculum consists of 4 specific subjects mostly: math, science, English, history. That is a specific section of what can be learned. And within those subsections of that, with like exams, focus on whatever questions the exams ask. Grades fundamentally don't work, and yes, accommodations and improving awareness of accommodations help to an extent, but at some point, we need to realize that grades don't work. And this isn't something that one or any school can do individually. So it's hard to say what the first steps are, besides, of course, awareness. I I think awareness is the first steps before any actual changes can happen. But yeah, that's what I would say about school accessibility and inclusiveness. And of course, this comes down to the students understanding grades and ableism and lots of other things.
All right. So now we're going to move on to audience questions. So if you have a question that you would like either Ben or Cora to answer, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. All right. While we're waiting for audience members to type in their questions, I'm going to start asking Ben and Cora some backup questions that I have written for them. So, again, starting with Ben and then on to Cora. Between elementary school, middle school, high school, and college, which level of school was the hardest for you to complete and why?
Oh shit! I knew. Okay. Um, all of them. College. College because I'm going. I'm still continuing to go for my RMAC, and it's a certified clinical registered medical assistant. And I have no accommodations because you can't accommodate in that field. You cannot accommodate. Like I have to really, you cannot large print syringes. You can't large print somebody's veins. Like I just have to deal with it. And yeah, it sucks that there's no accommodations. But it's what I love. It's just what I've always wanted to do since I was a little kid. So be a nurse, doctor, RMAC, just be with the patient, be able to give them their shots, draw their blood, give them EKGs, electrocardiograms, or CTs, cardiographical and then, yeah, I guess that's kind of just what I would say my hardest level of education is. I think it's just to come because I've got an externship coming up in the new year and I'm really nervous. And also being autistic, working with people is not the first thing that, comes easiest, but it's something I always strive to work on and do better with. So thank you.
For
So you have a couple questions in chat. I apologize, Cora, for interrupting.
Okay, I'll get to them.
should I go ahead with the existing question?
Sure.
Okay, so for me, my hardest time was definitely 10th and 11th grade. The English and history classes there were not at all something I could handle, and I don't know how I managed to get through them. The reason it wasn't as bad afterwards was because of the specific classes I was taking. In 12th grade, for example, my school had an option to replace English literature with a film class. So film would be, we treat it as literature, and that worked pretty well for me. Instead of history, the class was civics, so understanding political issues and how to deal with that instead of history worked a lot better for me as well. Once I got to college, the school I was at mostly let me choose whatever courses I wanted. And so that made it easier to avoid classes that I considered problematic.
Okay. And we're going to move on to, we have some audience questions now. So Mariel, my colleague, wrote down, did either of you have a teacher who was exceptional, who accommodated and included you well?
Yeah, I had a few. I just the first one that comes to mind was I was in 12th grade. I had this English teacher. His name was Mr. Kelly. And R.I.P. Mr. Kelly. He's since passed and left this earth, but he'll always have a mark on me and affected on how I write and how I express myself. And um, he always said, Ben, you can write about anything you want, because all these other teachers were like, oh, you can't write about those issues. Those issues are taboo. Those issues are, are red button issue or red topic issues, red light issues. Like you can't talk about those. And I'm like, why not? They're real life. And so just like teenage angst and stuff. And it's just Mr. Kelly, he believed in me, and uh, I ended up being published in that year's literary magazine, um, which had to be, which a colleague of mine who is also a student of Mr. Kelly's, she wrote her first experience having sex, and the title, I remember, sorry, the title was My First Fuck. And so the parents were like, how can you allow our students to write this? And Mr. Kelly, I always remember what Mr. Kelly said, because all these parents came storming in, and I was in this class at the period when this happened. And he's right. And he's like, they're almost adults. You know, they're going to learn about this stuff if they haven't already. They need to express themselves. They need to experience the world. And you just hear the class like cheering him on. It was so cool. But yeah, that's my experience.
All right, and I think since we only have 5 minutes till Ben has to go, we'll have him answer the other question that's in the chat too. So Ben, are there any examples of times when you've been able to successfully advocate for accommodations and supports for yourself as a student? What self-advocacy strategies would you recommend to other students with disabilities?
I'll go off that second portion of that one first. What self-advocacy strategies would I have? The first one is, and in this one, even I have a hard time doing this. I would say you need to have confidence in yourself, because nobody is going to have the confidence in you. You need to have the confidence in yourself. Nobody else is. Do not expect people to come and advocate on your behalf. If they do, it's fantastic. All the more welcome. We welcome you. But don't go in and thinking that it's just automatically going to happen. You know, another thing that I would have for advocacy is document everything. If you have a documented disability, that could help you out. Get accommodations, document it. The documents that your doctors give you, keep those in a safe place. Don't lose anything. Don't lose important papers. Know where they always are. There are countless ways to get organized. Find one that works for you and stick with it. Another one on that end, I guess this final one that I'll give you is, yeah, keep things organized. You know, if you're not good with speeches, or if you're nervous, practice what you're going to say. Yeah, otherwise you'll sound really nervous. This, but I guess those are the top three that I would have to say. What was that first part of that question, Colin?
Well, the first part of the question was, are there any examples of times when you have been able to successfully advocate for accommodations and supports for yourself as a student?
Oh, okay. So times, yeah, but like these were what the nicest teachers. I'll just say this: when you have a really good teacher, a really good mentor, like all the accommodations will already be put in place. And if they're not, all you should have to do is just say, hey, I need this thing, or hey, could we do this? And they should be like, hey, no problem. I mean, I have been like, I don't have an example, like per se. I mean, I have tons of examples, but they're like all the same. They all involve me speaking up, advocating for myself, saying, hey, I need to sit here because I can't see this. Hey, I need a little more time on this because it was hard, or I couldn't focus at night on this or that, you know, just those kinds of things. But yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ben. It has been a pleasure to have you on this webinar today.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Moving on. Now I'm going to ask the same audience questions that I just asked Ben to Cora. So, Cora, did you have a teacher who was exceptional, who accommodated and included you well?
That is an interesting question, because in the classes I struggled with, I can't think of, I was about to say, yeah, I can actually think of a teacher in a class I struggled with who we worked well together. That was in my 11th grade English class. So near the beginning, he suggested that I participate in class less, which given the circumstances, was reasonable. But throughout the year, he saw my improvement, and I actually didn't have to ask him for a recommendation for colleges. He volunteered to write a rec, so that was nice of him. I also had something with classes I was doing well in. So in 10th grade, I was starting Algebra 2, and the teachers quickly realized I was in the wrong class and should jump to the next one. And I'm pointing this out because skipping a math class is not a regular process. And so the thing here is accommodating strengths can be an issue too, because sometimes what you're doing gets boring and you can't progress. So they were able to put me forward, which by itself didn't solve that much problems, though in the long run, it meant that once I got to college, I could start linear algebra earlier than I would have otherwise and start other advanced math classes earlier than I would have otherwise. So it worked well in the end.
Okay, and learning from the mistake I made with Ben, I'm going to answer the two questions from the same chat one by one. So the first question, are there any examples of times when you've been able to successfully advocate for accommodations and supports for yourself as a student?
Let's say any examples when I've been able to successfully advocate. I mean, what comes to mind is throughout college, I would talk to the writing center to get a head start on an essay or presentation. Sometimes I would ask the professor for starting points as well. And once I got started, I didn't need like constant support. It was just getting started that was the hard part.
Okay, and the second question from the same chat. What self-advocacy strategies would you recommend to other students with disabilities?
I would say learn what resources your school has to offer and learn to make the most of them.
All right. Very good. So I want to close before we go. I want to close by given Emily and Cora didn't have anything for the question on whether a teacher refused accommodations. I actually did have that in my 11th grade Algebra 2 trig class. So I took Algebra 2 / trigonometry where for the first 3 quarters I took the entire Algebra 2 material that's usually for Algebra 2 classes taken for all 4 quarters. And for the 4th quarter, we learned trigonometry. And if we got like a B or higher in that class, we moved on to AP Calculus. My Algebra 2/Trig teacher taught at an extremely fast pace. I could not keep up with her notes because I prefer notes either being because I prefer taking notes slowly by either the teacher slowing down or being given a teacher copy of the notes. She refused to do either of those, and as a result, I had to retake I had to constantly retake quizzes and tests because I got F's on them. And a lot of the times she scheduled retakes with me did not work for my busy schedule as a tuba player. I had a tutor for AP English. I had Special Olympics. I had a lot of stuff that kept me from being able to come back. Oh, and I had to come back with corrections to my failed quizzes and tests before I did retakes. And as a result of my teacher not helping me and doing like very little to help me, I ended up getting a C in both semesters. And this was my 11th grade year. And remember, my 12th grade year, I was going to be taken to AP Calculus. And because I did so poorly on the Algebra 2/Trigonometry class, I had to take pre-calculus in my 12th grade year instead of AP Calculus. So yeah, I did not take AP Calculus in my last year of high school because the math teacher I had for the AP Calculus qualifying class refused to adhere to my IEP. So yeah, let's move on.
This is Kimberly. May I make a comment?
Okay.
So this is coming from somebody who was not diagnosed until later in life. I wasn't diagnosed with my disability until I was 35 years old. And I went back to graduate school when I was 37. And so I did not have any knowledge of accommodations that would be useful for me with my disability. And so my experience going to the college's disability services and trying to explain that I have a disability, here's what it is, it's documented. They basically accused me of getting that diagnosis in order to have extra time and extra accommodations to be able to do better in grad school. And because my disability is one that most typically is diagnosed when people are younger. And so I had to actually fight for the ability and the rights to actually have accommodations in my graduate school program. So it's not just with students who are diagnosed earlier in life. It happens as well for older students and people who have not received their diagnosis until later in life. It's just an inherent issue that exists within the school systems.
All right. Next slide, please. So now, before we adjourn, I would like everyone who attended today to please take a moment to provide us some feedback. You can either access the quick survey via the QR code in the PowerPoint or via the link in the chat. It should take you less than 5 minutes.
Thanks, Colin. And this is Kimberly again. So thank you everyone for joining us today. As a reminder, this event was recorded and you can view the video later at Disability Empowerment Center's YouTube channel. I'll post the link in chat in a moment. Our August webinar will be about ableism in employment and will take place on Tuesday, August 19th. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great remainder of your day.